Hi and welcome back to Sadie's Spincraft. This is another spin and story time. We are going to do chapters 15 and 16 of Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder. We will also be finishing the yarn in this one, so please stay tuned until the end and you shall see the finished product. Hope you all enjoy. Chapter 15. Laughter surrounded me. Your weapon won't do you any good. I could easily convince you that it was your heart you want to plunge that knife into instead of mine. I spotted her across the clearing, clad in a loose green camouflage shirt, cinched tight at the waist, and identical coloured pants. The southern magician lounged against a tree with her arms crossed in front of her posture casual. Expecting the southern magician's goons to attack me from the forest, I kept the knife out in front of me, turning in circles. Relax, the magician said. We're alone. I stopped circling but retained a firm grip on my weapon. Why should I trust you? Last time we met, you ordered me killed, even supplied the handy little strap. The sudden realisation that she hadn't needed her thugs at all leaped into my mind. I began reciting poison names in my head. The magician laughed like someone amused by a small child. That won't help you. The only reason reciting worked at the festival was because Valak was there. She stepped closer. I waved the knife in a threatening gesture. Yelena, relax. I projected into your mind to guide you here. If I wanted you dead, I would have pushed you from the trees. Accidents are less trouble than murders in Ixia, a fact you're well aware of. I ignored her jibe. Why didn't I have an accident at the festival or at another time? I need to be close to you. It takes a lot of energy to kill someone. I'd rather use mundane methods if possible. The festival was the first time I could get close to you without Valak nearby, or so I thought. She shook her head in frustration. Why didn't you kill Valak with your magic at the festival? I asked. Then I would have been easy prey. Magic doesn't work on Valak. He's resistant to its effects. But I could ask... Before I could ask for more information, she hurried on. I don't have time to explain everything. Valak will be here soon, so I'll make this brief, Yelena. I'm here to make you an offer. I remembered my last offer, to be the food taster or to be executed. What could you possibly offer me? I have a job, colour-coordinated uniforms, and a boss to die for. What more could I need? Asylum in Sitia, she said, her tone tight, so you can learn to control and use your power. Power? The word squeaked out of my mouth before I could stop it. What power? Oh, come on. How could you not know? You've used it at least twice at the castle. My mind whirled. She was talking about my survival instinct, that strange buzzing that possessed me whenever my life was in serious jeopardy. My body numbed with dread. I felt as if she had just told me I had a terminal disease. I was working undercover nearby when I was overcome by your screaming, raw power. Once I was able to pinpoint the source to Commander Ambrose's food taster, I knew a rescue effort to smuggle you south would be impossible. You're either with Valak or he's been one step behind you. Even now I'm taking an extraordinary risk, but it's too dangerous to have a wild magician in the north. It's amazing you lasted this long without being discovered. The only choice left was to was termination, a task that proved more difficult than I'd first imagined, but not impossible. And now I'm supposed to trust you. Do you think I'd meekly follow you to sit here like a lamb to the slaughter? Yelena, if you weren't playing fugitive, which brought you out of the castle and away from Valak, you'd be dead by now. I wasn't sure if I believed her. What would she gain by helping me? Why go to all this effort if she had the power to kill me? Something else must be motivating her. You don't believe me, she grunted in frustration. Okay, how about a little demonstration? She tilted her head to the side and pressed her lips together. Searing hot pain whipped through my mind like lightning, wrapping my arms and hands around my head. I tried in vain to block the onslaught. Then a fist-size force slammed into my forehead. I jolted backwards and fell to the ground. Sprawled on my back, I felt the pain disappear as fast as it had arrived. Through vision blurred with tears, I squinted at the magician. She still stood near the edge of the clearing. She hadn't touched me, at least not physically. The weight of her mental connection felt like a wool cap encompassing my skull. What the hell was that? I demanded. What happened to the singing? I was dazed by her attack, the air on my body feeling as if it had liquefied, and when I moved to a sitting position, the dense air swirled and lapped at my skin. I sang at the festival because I was trying to be kind. This was an effort to convince you that if I wanted you dead, I wouldn't be wasting my time talking to you now, and I certainly wouldn't wait until you were in Scythia. Her head cocked as if she listened to an invisible person whispering in her ear. Valak has dropped all pretense of stealth. He's travelling fast. 2 men pursue him, but the men believe they're chasing you. She paused and her mouth settled once again into a hard line as she concentrated. I can slow the men down, but not Valak. She focused her faraway gaze on me. Are you coming with me? I couldn't speak. The thought that her idea of kindness was singing someone to death had left me quite distracted. I stared at her in complete astonishment. No, I had to force the word out. What? It wasn't the answer she'd expected. You enjoy being the food taster? No, I don't, but I'll die if I go with you. You'll die if you stay. I'll take my chances. I stood, brushed the dirt off my legs and retrieved my knife. The last thing I wanted to do was explain to the magician about the poison in my blood. Why give her another weapon to be used against me? But with her mental link to me, I only had to think about butterfly's dust, and she knew. There are antidotes, she said. Can you find one before morning? I asked. She shook her head. No, we would need more time. Our healers would need to understand where the poison is hiding. It would be in your blood, or in your muscles, or anywhere. And they would need to know how it kills in order to banish it. When she saw my complete lack of understanding, the magician continued, the source of our power, what you call magic, is like a blanket surrounding the world. Our minds tap into this source, pulling a slender thread down to enhance our magical abilities, to turn them on. Every person has the latent ability to read minds and influence the physical world without touching it, but they don't have the ability to connect with the power source. She sighed, looking unhappy. Yelena, we can't have your wild power flaring uncontrolled without knowing it. You're pulling power. Instead of a thread, you're grabbing whole sections and bunching the power blanket around you. As you grow older, you will have amassed so much power that it will explode or flame out. This flame out will not only kill you, it will warp and damage the power source itself, ripping a hole in the blanket. We can't risk a flame out, and soon you'll be untrainable. That is why we have no choice but to terminate you before you reach that point. How long do I have? I asked. 1 year, maybe a little more if you can control yourself. After that, you'll be beyond our help, and we need you, Yelena. Powerful magicians are scarce in Scythia. My mind raced over my options. Her display of power had convinced me she was more of a threat than I had ever imagined, and that I would be a complete idiot to trust her at all. However, if I didn't go, she'd kill me where I stood. So I delayed the inevitable. Give me a year to find a permanent antidote, to find a way to escape to Scythia, a year free from worrying that you're plotting my death. She stared deep into my eyes, her mental touch pressed harder in my mind, and she searched for a sign that I might be deceiving her. All right, 1 year, my pledge to you. She paused. Go on, I said. I know you want to end this meeting with some kind of threat, maybe a dire warning. Feel free, I'm used to it. I wouldn't know how to deal with a conversation that didn't include one. You put on such a brave front, but I know if I took another step towards you, you'd wet your pants. With your blood, I brandished my knife, but I couldn't keep a straight face. The boast sounded ridiculous even to my own ears. I snickered, she laughed. The release of tension made me giddy, and soon I was laughing and crying. The magician then grew sober. Cocking her head again, she listened to her invisible companion. Valak is close. I must go. Tell me one more thing. What? How did you know I'd be the fugitive magic? No, I have sources of information that I'm unable to reveal. I nodded my understanding. Asking for details had been worth a try. Be careful, Yelena, she said, vanishing into the forest. I realised that I didn't even know her name. Iris, she whispered into my mind, and then her mental touch withdrew. As I thought about everything she had told me, I realised I had many more questions to ask her, all more important than who had leaked information. Knowing she was gone, though, I suppressed the desire to call after her. Instead, I dropped to the ground. With my body shaking, I replaced the knife in the backpack. I pulled out my water bottle and took a long drink, wishing the container was filled with something stronger, something that would burn my throat on its way down, something to focus on besides the disjointed and lost feeling that threatened to consume me. I needed time to think before Valak and the two men caught up with me. Taking out the rope and grappling hook, I searched once again for a suitable tree and re-entered the forest canopy. Moving south, I let the physical effort of climbing keep my body busy while I sorted through all the information the magician had given me. When I reached another path in the forest, I found a comfortable position on a tree branch within sight of the trail. I secured myself to the trunk of the tree with my rope. The magician had promised me 1 year, but I didn't want to tempt her with an easy target. She could change her mind. After all, what did I know about magicians and their pledges? She claimed I had power, magical power, that I had always thought of as my survival instinct. When I had been in those dire situations, I had felt possessed. as if someone else more capable of dealing with the crisis took temporary control over my body, rescued me from death, and then left. Could the strange buzzing sound that erupted from my throat and saved my life really be the same as Iris's power? If so, I must keep my magic a secret, and I had to gain some control of the power to keep it from flaming out. But how? Avoid life-threatening situations. I scoffed at the notion of evading trouble. Trouble seemed to find me regardless of my efforts. Orphaned, tortured, poisoned, cursed with magic. The list grew longer by the day. I didn't have the time to resolve these complex issues, but circled without end in my mind. Focusing my thoughts on the present, I studied the trail below. Small saplings threatened to retake the narrow forest path. It must have been one of the abandoned roadways used to trade with Scythia. I waited for Valak. He would demand an explanation about my encounter with the magician, and I was ready to give one. My only warning of Valak's arrival was a gentle rustle of the branch above mine. I looked up to see him uncoiling from the upper branch like a snake. He dropped soundlessly beside me. Green camouflage seemed to be the outfit of choice today. Valak's was skin tight and came equipped with a hood to cover his hair and neck. Brown and green paint streaked his face, causing the bright blue of his eyes to stand out in stark contrast. I looked down at my own ragtag outfit. Some of the leaves had frayed at the edges, and my uniform had sustained many tears from climbing through the trees. Next time I planned to flee through the woods, I'd persuade Alana to sew me an outfit like Valak's. "You're unbelievable," Valak said. "Is that good or bad?" "Good. I assumed you would give the soldiers a good chase, and you did. But I never expected this." Valak pointed out at my leaf-covered shirt and swept his arms wide, indicating the trees. "And to top it all off, you encountered the magician and somehow managed to survive." Sarcasm tinged Valak's voice during his last comment. His way of asking for explanations, I suppose. I don't know what exactly happened. I found myself tearing through the woods until I reached a clearing where she was waiting. The only thing she told me was that I had ruined her plans by killing Rayad, and then pain slammed into my skull. The memory of her attack was still fresh in my mind, so I allowed the full horror of it to show on my face. If Valak ever suspected what had really happened, I wouldn't live the year the magician had granted me. And mentioning Rayad's name supported one of Valak's theories about why the magician was after me. I took a deep breath. I started reciting poisons. I tried to push the pain away. Then the attack stopped and she said, "You were getting too close." When I opened my eyes, she had disappeared. "Why didn't you wait for me in the clearing?" "I didn't know where she'd gone. I felt safer in the trees, knowing you'd be able to find me." Valak considered my explanation. I covered my nervousness by sorting through my backpack. After a long while, he grinned. "We certainly proved the commander wrong. He thought you'd be caught by mid-morning." I smiled with relief. Taking advantage of his good mood, I asked, "Why does the commander hate magicians so much?" The pleased expression dropped from Valak's face. "He has many reasons. They were the king's colleagues, aberrations of nature, who used their power for purely selfish and greedy reasons. They amassed wealth and jewels, curing the sick only if the dying family could pay their exorbitant fee. The king's magicians played mind games with everyone, taking delight in causing havoc. The commander wants nothing to do with them. Curious, I pushed on. What about using them for his purpose? He thinks magicians are not to be trusted, but I'm of two minds about that, Valak said. He gazed out over the forest floor as he talked. I understand the commander's concerns. Killing all the king's magicians was good strategy, but I think the younger generation born with power could be recruited for our intelligence network. We disagree on this issue, and despite my arguments, the commander has... Valak stopped. He seemed reluctant to continue. Has what? Ordered that those born with even the slightest amount of magical power be killed immediately. I had known about the executions of the southern spies and the magicians from the king's era, but imagining babies being ripped from their mother's arms made me gasp in horror. Those poor children. It's brutal, but not that brutal, Valak said. The sadness had softened his eyes. The ability to connect with the power source doesn't occur until after puberty, which is around 16. It usually takes another year for someone other than their family to notice and report them. Then they either escape to Citya or I find them. His words had the weight of a wooden beam pressed down on my shoulders. I found it difficult to breathe. 16 was when Brazil had recruited me, when my survival instinct had started to flare. Defending against Brazil and Rayod's torture. Had they been trying to test me for magic? But why didn't they report me? Why hadn't Valak come? I had no idea what Brazil wanted, and knowing now about my power only added yet another way I could die. If Valak discovered my magic, I was dead. If I didn't find a way to go to Citya, I was dead. If someone poisoned the commander's food, I was dead. If Brazil built his factory and sought revenge for his son, I was dead. Dead, 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 and dead. Death by butterfly's dust was beginning to look attractive. It was the only scenario where I would get to choose when, where, and how I died. I would have sunk into a deep, brooding bout of self-pity, but Valak grabbed my arm and put a finger to his green lips. The distant sounds of hoofbeats and men talking reached my ears. My first thought was that it was an illusion sent by the magician, but soon enough I saw mules pulling wagons. The width of the wagons filled the entire path. Saplings and bushes thwacked against the wheels. 2 mules pulled one wagon, and one man dressed in brown trader's uniform led the team. There were 6 wagons and 6 men who conversed among themselves as they travelled. From my post in the tree, I could see that the first 5 wagons were loaded with burlap sacks that might have been filled with grain or flour. The last wagon held strange, oval-shaped yellow pods. Snake Forest was just bustling with activity today. I thought in wonder. All we needed was the fire dancers to jump from the trees to entertain us all. Valak and I sat in our tree as the men passed below us. Their uniforms were soaked with sweat, and I noticed a few of them had rolled up their pants so they wouldn't trip. One man's belt was cinched tight, causing the extra material to bunch around his waist, while another man's stomach threatened to rip through his buttons. These poor traders obviously didn't have a permanent residence. If they had, their seamstress would never have permitted them to walk around looking like that. When they were out of sight and hearing range, Valak whispered, "Don't move, I'll be back." He dropped to the ground and followed the caravan. I fidgeted on my branch, wondering if the other 2 men Iris had said were tracking Valak would find me before he returned. The sun was disappearing in the west, and cooler air was replacing the day's heat. Muscles stiff from inactivity throbbed as the last of my energy faded. The strenuous day of climbing caught up to me. For the first time, the possibility of spending a night alone in the forest made me apprehensive. I had never imagined staying free this long. At last, Valak returned and waved me down from the tree. I moved with care, fumbling with the rope around my waist as my abused muscles trembled with fatigue. He carried a small sack, which he handed to me. Inside were 5 of the yellow pods that had been stacked in the last wagon. I took one out. Now that I could see it up close, I noticed that the elongated oval pod was about 8 inches in length, with close to 10 furrows running from one end to the other. It was thick around the middle, with 2 hands wrapped around its centre. My fingers just overlapped. I was amazed by Valak's ability to steal them in the daylight from a moving wagon. "How did you get these?" "Trade secret," Valak said with a grin. Getting the pods was easy, but I had to wait for the men to water their mules to look in the burlap sacks. When I slid the pod back in with the others, I saw that in the bottom of the sack was a pile of dark brown pebbles. Reaching deeper, I pulled a handful into the waning light. They looked like beans. "What's this?" I asked. "They're from the sacks," he explained. "I want you to take these back to Commander Ambrose. Tell him I don't know what they are or where they came from, and I'm following the caravan to see where they're going." "Are they doing something illegal?" "I'm not sure. If these pods and beans are from Sitia, then yes, it's illegal to trade with the South. One thing I do know, those men aren't traders." I was about to ask him how he knew this when the answer clicked in my mind. Their uniforms don't fit. Borrowed maybe, or stolen? Most likely stolen. If you're going to borrow a uniform, I would think you'd find one that fits. Valak was quiet for a moment, listening to the sounds of the forest. I could hear the droning of the insects growing louder as the sun set. "Yelena, I want you to find those 2 men you saw this afternoon and have them escort you back to the castle. I don't want you alone. If the magician plans on attacking you again, she'll have to deal with 2 more, and I doubt she'd have the energy. Don't tell anyone about your tree climbing, the magician, or the caravan, but give a complete report about everything to the commander." "What about my antidote?" "The commander keeps a supply handy. He'll give it to you, and don't worry about your incentive. You've earned every penny. When I get back, I'll make sure you get it. Now, I need to keep moving, or I'll spend the rest of the night catching up to the caravan." "Valak, wait," I demanded. For the second time today, someone wanted to disappear before explaining everything to my satisfaction, and I was growing very weary of it. He stopped. "How do I find the others?" Without the sun, my sense of direction failed. I wasn't sure if I could find my way back to the clearing, much less to the castle, on my own. "Just follow this path." He pointed in the direction the wagon had come from. I managed to shake them off my trail before I caught up with you. The soldiers were heading southwest. They're probably staking out this trail. Technically, that's the best strategy. Valak jogged away along the path. I watched him go. He moved with the light grace and speed of a deer. His muscles rippled under his form-fitting camouflage. When he was out of sight, I crunched my feet on the loose stones of the trail, making noise. Twilight robbed the trees of colour as darkness descended. Uneasiness settled over me. Every rustle caused my heart to jump, and I found myself peering over my shoulder, wishing Valak was there. A shout pierced the air before I could react. A large shape rushed me, tackling me to the ground. Chapter 16. "Got you," said the man, sitting on top of me. Even with my face pressed into the stones and my mouth full of dirt, I recognised his rough voice from earlier in the day. He yanked my arms behind me. I felt cold metal bite into my wrists as I heard the snap and clink of manacles. "Isn't that a bit much, Janko?" asked Janko's partner. Janko moved off me, and I was hauled to my feet in the semi-darkness. I saw the man that held me was thin, with a goatee. He wore his dark hair buzzed with the typical military style, and a thick scar ran from his right temple to his ear. The lower half of his right ear was missing. "She was too damned hard to find. I don't want to get in her way," Janko mumbled. His companion was about to hit the same height, but twice as wide. Thick sculptured muscles bulged through his camouflage uniform. Small damp curls clung to his head, and from this distance his eyes held no colour except the black of his pupils. I wanted to flee. It was almost dark. I was manacled and alone with two strange men. Logically, I knew that these were the commander's soldiers, and they were professionals, but that did not stop my pulse from racing. "You made us look bad," Janko said. "Every soldier out here is probably going to be reassigned. We'll all be cleaning out latrines because of you." "That's enough, Janko," Colourless Eyes said. "We won't be scrubbing floors. We found her. And take a look at that get-up. No one expected her to go camo. That's why she was so hard to find. But still, the captain's gonna shit when he sees this." "And the captain's back at the castle?" I asked, trying to prompt them in that direction. "No, he's leading a line further southwest. We'll have to report to him." I sighed at the delay. I had hoped for a quick trip back. "How about you send Janko here to find the captain while we head to the castle? Sorry, but we're not permitted to split up. We're required to travel in pairs, no exceptions." Janko started. "Yelena," I supplied. "Why are you so anxious to get back?" "I'm afraid of the dark." Colourless Eyes laughed. "Somehow I doubt that." "Janko, take off her cuffs. She's not going to run away. That's not the point of this exercise." Janko hesitated. I said, "You have my word, Janko. I won't run if you take off the manacles." He grumbled some more, but unlocked the cuffs. I wiped the dirt from my face. "Thanks." He nodded and then pointed to his partner. "He's Ardinus. Ari for short." Ari extended his hand, giving me an honour. If a soldier offered his hand, he was acknowledging me as an equal. I shook it gravely, and then the three of us headed southwest to find their captain. The trip to the castle was almost comical. Almost. If my stiff and sore muscles hadn't protested my every step, and if the bone-deep ache of pure exhaustion hadn't pulled at my body like a stone cloak, I would have been amused. Janko and Ari's captain fumed and blustered when we caught up with him. Well, Look at what our two sweethearts finally found, Captain Parafet said. His bald head was beaded with sweat that rolled down the sides of his face, soaking his collar. He was old for a captain, and I wondered if his surly disposition was the reason for his lack of promotion. I'm supposed to have the best scouts in Commander Ambrose's guard, Parafet shouted at Harry and Janko. Maybe you can enlighten us to which procedure you followed that took you over 17 hours to find the bitch, Parafet continued his verbal bashing. Even in the darkness I could see his face turning purple. I tuned him out and studied his unit. A couple of faces smirked, agreeing with their captain. Some were resigned, as if used to his tantrums, and others were bored and tired expressions. One man, who had shaved his entire head except for his bangs, stared with an uncomfortable intensity at me. When I made eye contact, he jerked his glance to the captain. Nix, put the bitch in manacles, Parafet ordered, and the man with the bangs pulled metal cuffs off his belt. I see our two prima donnas can't be bothered to follow this unit's standard procedures. As Nix approached, I searched for a chance to slip away. My promise to Janko had only extended a hands-free trip back to the castle. Harry sensed my frame of mind, placed a large hand on my shoulder, anchoring me to his side. We have her word, sir, that she won't run off, he said in my defence. Like that means anything, Parafet spat on the ground. She has given her word, Harry repeated. A low rumble in his voice reminded me of a huge dog growling a warning. Parafet grudgingly allowed procedure to be modified, but savoured his bad temper by harassing the rest of his soldiers into formation, initiating a fast march back to the castle. I walked wedged between Harry and Janko like some prized trophy. Harry explained that the captain didn't handle surprises well and had been frustrated by my day-long romp in the forest. It doesn't help that we found you. He didn't promote us to his unit like the others. We were assigned by Valak, Janko said. Parafet's mood turned blacker when the dog team overtook our procession. Chaos erupted as barking dogs and more guards tangled together. I experienced a moment of panic when the canines rushed me. As it turned out, they greeted me with wagging tails and licking tongues. Their pure joy was infectious. I smiled. I scratched their ears, stopping only when Parafet scowled and shouted for order. The dogs wore no collars. The kennel master was part of the tracking team. The dogs reassembled on Porter's command, following his orders without fail. The commander of the dog team seemed disappointed that Porter's dogs hadn't found me first, but she took it with better grace than Harry's captain had. She introduced herself as Captain Etta and walked beside me to ask questions about my run. I liked her easy, respectful manner. Her mop of dark blonde hair pushed the limits of military regulations. I stuck to the truth as much as I could during the conversation. When it came to questions regarding my scent had disappeared, I lied. I explained that I had walked northward in the water for a while before heading east. Ita shook her head. We were so focused on you heading south. Parafet was right to look east. My eventual destination was south, but I wanted to try and confuse the dogs before I turned. You succeeded. The commander won't be pleased. Good thing Harry and Janko found you. Had you stayed out till morning, both teams would have been demoted. The last 2 miles to the castle were a blur. Using every ounce of my dwindling energy to keep my feet moving forward, I concentrated all my strength on keeping up with the soldiers. When we stopped, it took me a moment to realise that we had entered the castle complex. It was well past midnight. The noise of our arrival bounced and amplified off the silent stone walls. The dogs followed Porter to the kennels, while the weary parade of soldiers trod up the steps towards the commander's office. We finished our march along the empty desks of the throne room. Lantern light blazed from the open door of the commander's office. The two soldiers standing guard wore amused expressions, but remained quiet and still. Parafet and Etta shared a look of resignation before going in to report to the commander. I found a chair and collapsed into it, accepting the risk that I might have difficulties regaining my feet. Soon the captains returned. Parafet's face was creased in a dark frown, but Etta's showed no emotion. They dismissed their units. I was summoning the energy to stand when Etta came over and helped me to my feet. "Thanks," I said. "The commander awaits your report." I nodded. Etta left to rejoin her unit, and I headed toward the office. I hesitated in the doorway. I was used to the semi-darkness of the throne room, and the lantern light stung my eyes. "Come in," Commander Ambrose ordered. I stood before his desk. He sat immobile and impassive, as always, his smooth, ethereal face barren of wrinkles. A stray thought plucked at my mind, and I wondered about his age. Grey streaks painted the commander's short hair. His rank alone suggested an older man, but his slight build and youthful face made me guess his age was closer to 40. About 7 years older than Valak, in my estimation of Valak's age, if my estimation of Valak's age was accurate. Report. I described my actions for the day in detail, including my tree swinging and the magician, giving the same version of my encounter with the southerner that I had told Valak. I concluded my report with the caravan and Valak's orders that I return. I waited for the commander's questions. "So Arian Jankor didn't capture you?" he asked. "No, but they were the only ones who even came close. They passed right below my tree that I hid in, and were skilled enough to track Valak for a while." The commander stilled for a moment. His golden eyes looked past me as he absorbed the information. "Where are the items Valak procured?" I opened my backpack and placed the pods and beans on his desk. He picked up a yellow pod and rotated it in his hands before returning it. Grabbing a handful of beans, he hefted them, feeling their weight and texture. After sniffing one, he broke the bean in half. The inside was as unrevealing as the outside had been. "They're not native to Ixia. They must be from Scythia. Yelena, take them with you and do some research. Find out what these are and where they're grown." Me? Stunned, I had expected to dump them on the commander and forget about them. "Yes, Valak is constantly reminding me not to underestimate you, and once again you've proven yourself. General Brazil gave you a good education. I'd hate to see it go to waste." I wanted to argue, but I was curtly dismissed. Sighing, I dragged my unwilling body to the baths. Painfully peeling off my leaf-covered clothes, I washed the mud from my face and neck before submerging into a steaming pool. There I luxuriated in the warmth, stretching my aching muscles under the hot water to loosen them, hoping to dissolve some of the glue from my hair. I dipped my head back, pulled my bun apart, and let the long black strands float on the surface. The gentle sounds of lapping lulled me. Strong hands grabbed my shoulders. I jerked awake under the water. Liquid filled my mouth and nose. I pushed the hands away in panic. They released their grip for a second. I began to sink. Instinctively, I clutched my unknown assailant's arms. Before I could curse my stupidity, I was yanked out of the bath and dumped onto the cold floor. I sprang to my feet to meet the next assault, but there stood Marg with a disgusted expression anchored on her broad face. Water dripped from her hands and had soaked her sleeves. I shivered and pulled wet clumps of hair off my face. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I yelled. "Saving your worthless life," she snarled. "What?" "Don't worry, I took no pleasure in it. Frankly, I would have rejoiced to see you drown. Justice finally served, but the commander ordered me to find you and see to your needs." Mag grabbed a towel from the table and threw it at me. "You may have the commander and Valak fooled into thinking you're smart, but how smart can you be to fall asleep in a deep pool of water?" I tried to think of a rude retort, remembering Delana's advice to be nasty right back. Nothing. My brain felt waterlogged with fatigue. The idea that Marg had just saved my life kept sloshing around in my head. It was such a foreign concept that I couldn't find a proper place to dock it. Marg snorted, hatred oozing from her. I followed my orders. Some might even agree that rescuing you was beyond call of duty, so don't you forget it, rat. Soon she spun around to leave. Her skirts wrapped around her legs and she stumbled through the door. So much for a dramatic exit, I thought as I towel dried. I felt no gratitude towards Marg for saving my life, assuming that was what she'd done. She might have pushed me under in spite, then saved me, and I didn't owe her a favour. She had left me in a puddle of my own vomit after I had taken my love. I had refused to clean out my room in Valak's suite, had written me a nasty message in the dust, and even worse, was probably leaking information about me to Brazil. If she had saved me from drowning, then, in my mind, it was payback for some of those indiscretions, but not for all. As I saw it, she still owed me. The hot soak helped restore my flexibility to my muscles. I peeled the leaves from my hands, although green still clung to parts of my hair. I thought with some artful braiding I might be able to hide it. The walk back to Valak's suite seemed endless. In a zombie-like state of mind, I passed through countless hallways, intersections and doorways. My steps were fueled by the single-minded desire of getting to bed. For the next few days, I fell into a routine. I tasted the commander's meals, went to the library for research, and took a daily walk around the castle complex. My day as a fugitive had caused me to crave the outdoors, and if I couldn't swing through the trees, at least I could explore the grounds. I used the map of the castle that I had copied in my journal to find the library. It was a multi-level suite of rooms, begudgeoning with books. The smell of decay and dust floated in the air, along with a sense of abandonment. I was saddened by the knowledge that this tremendous source of information was going to waste because the commander discouraged his people from educating themselves beyond what was necessary for their jobs. Within his military structure, a person was trained specifically for their position only. Learning just for the sake of learning was frowned on and greeted with suspicion. Once I had ascertained that the library was truly a forgotten place, I brought the pods and beans there instead of carrying the heavy books back to my room. I found a small nook tucked away in a corner. The nook had a wooden table which faced one of the large egg-shaped windows that randomly perforated the back wall of the library. Sunlight streamed into the nook, and after clearing the table of dust, it became my work area. Cutting one of the yellow pods in half, I discovered it was filled with a white mucus, a white pulp. A taste of the pulp revealed it to have a sweet and citrus flavour with a taint of sour as it was starting to rot. The white flesh contained seeds. I cleaned the pulp from the seeds and uncovered 36 of them. They resembled the beans from the caravan. My excitement diminished as I compared seed against bean in the sunlight. The pod seed was purple instead of brown, and when I bit into the seed, I spit it out as a strong, bitter, astringent taste filled my mouth. Nothing close to the slightly tart and earthy taste of the brown beans. Assuming that the pods were a fruit and the beans edible, I pulled out every botany book I could find in the library and piled them on my table. Then I went through the shelves again. This time I grabbed any volume with information about poisons. A much smaller stack. Valak had probably taken the interesting ones back to his office. My third trip through the shelves was an effort to find books on magic. Nothing. I paused by an empty shelf, an oddity in this tightly packed library, and wondered if it had contained manuals about magic. Considering how the commander viewed magic, it was logical to destroy any pertinent information. On a whim, I explored the lower levels of the bookcase under the empty shelf, thinking that a book from the empty shelf could have slid back behind the other books. I took out all the texts on the lower shelves. My efforts were rewarded by the discovery of a slim volume entitled Magical Power Sources. I hugged the book to my chest as paranoia gripped me. Scanning the library, I made sure no one was there. With sweaty palms, I hid the book in my backpack. I planned to read it later, preferably in my room with the door locked. Giddy with my illicit acquisition, I searched the various rooms of the library until I found a comfortable chair. Before dragging it back to my nook, I beat the dust from its purple velvet cushions. It was the most elegant seat I had seen in the castle, and I wondered who had used it before me. Had the dead king been a bibliophile? The considerable collection of books said as much. Either that, or he had shown his librarian great favour. I spent many hours in that chair reading through the botany books and discovering nothing. I planned to decipher the pod and bean puzzle while I researched information for myself. The tedious work was at least broken into small sessions by my tasting the commander's meals and by my afternoon strolls around the castle. It had been 4 days since the exercise, and that afternoon my walk had a purpose. I scouted for a place with a view of the east gate, but where I wouldn't be obvious to the flow of people passing through. Valak still hadn't returned from his mission, and closing ceremonies had been performed the night before at the fire festival, ending the week-long celebration. Rand, looking hungover, had informed me this morning that Brazil and his retinue would finally leave the castle, via the East Gate to go home. The desire to see Brazil's retreating back with my own eyes had driven me to seek the perfect position. The barracks for the commander's soldiers filled both the northeast and southwest corners of the castle complex. In the northeast barracks, the L-shaped building extended from the north gate to the east gate, and a large rectangular training area had been built next to the east leg of the building. There was a wooden fence around the yard, and when training was in progress, the fence attracted the castle's various residents to stop along it to watch the exercises. That afternoon I joined in with a group of observers who not only had a clear view of the fighting drills, but the East Gate as well. Rand's information proved accurate. Soon I was rewarded by a parade of green and black-clad soldiers. I could see Brazil on his dappled mare riding among his most trusted advisers. At the end of the procession, Brazil's retinue ignored the people around them. As I watched Brazil's back, Rayad's ghost appeared next to me. He smiled as he waved goodbye to his father. A shudder vibrated down my spine. I glanced around. Did anyone else see him? The group of people that I had been standing with had dispersed. Had Rayad scared them off? But when I looked again, his ghost was gone. A hand touched my arm. I flinched. Good riddance to that lot, Harry said, tilting his head towards the east gate. Seeing him for the first time in the sunlight, I noticed that Harry's eyes were such a pale blue that in the darkness his eyes had seemed to hold no colour. Harry stood with Janko on the other side of the fence. Both wore their sleeveless shirts and short pants that the soldiers liked to train in. Sweat-soaked and streaked with dirt, their faces and bodies sported new cuts and bruises. Bet you're as glad as we are to see them go, Janko said, resting his wooden training sword on the fence. He rubbed the sweat off his face with the bottom of his shirt. Yes, I am, I said. Looking toward the east gate, the three of us stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching Brazil's entourage disappear through the gate. We want to thank you, Yelena, Harry said. What for? The commander promoted us to captains. He said you gave us a good report, Janko said. Surprised and pleased that the commander would heed my words, I smiled at them. I could see Harry and Janko shared a loyalty to one another, an obvious bond of friendship and trust. 3 years ago I had felt that kind of kinship with May and Kara at the orphanage, but Rayad had torn me away, and the empty space inside me still ached. Rand had given me friendship, but there was still a distance. I longed to connect with someone. Unfortunately, my life as the food taster made it impossible. Who would take the risk of connecting with me when my odds of living through the next year were little to none? We're scouting for the commander's elite guard now, Janko said with pride in his voice. We owe you one. Any time you need help, just let us know, Harry said. His words gave me a bold idea. Brazil might be gone, but he was still a threat. I thought fast, searching for reasons why my plan wouldn't be to my benefit. I need help, I said. Surprise flashed over their faces. Harry recovered first. With what? He asked warily. I need to learn how to defend myself. Can you teach me self-defense and how to use a weapon? I held my breath. Was I asking too much? If they said no, I hadn't lost anything. At least I had tried. Harry and Janko looked at each other. Eyebrows twitched, heads tilted, lips pursed and hands made small movements. I watched their silent conversation in amazement as they discussed my request. What kind of weapon? Harry asked. Again, the hesitation evident in his voice. My mind raced. I needed something that was small enough to hide within my uniform. A knife, I said, knowing I'd have to return Rands to the kitchen. More facial expressions were exchanged. I thought Harry might be agreeing, but Janko looked queasy, as if the idea didn't sit well with him. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Look, I said, I'll understand if you refuse. I don't want to get you into trouble, and I know how Janko feels about me. I believe his exact words were, she's a criminal. So if the answer is no, that's fine with me. They stared at me in astonishment. How did you? Janko stared. Janko started to say, but Harry punched him on the arm. She overheard us in the forest, you dope. How close were you? 15 feet. Damn! Harry shook his head, which caused his tight blonde curls to bounce. We're more worried about Valak. We'll train you if he doesn't object. Agreed? Agreed. Harry and I shook hands. When I turned to Janko, he seemed deep in thought. A switchblade, he declared, grabbing my hand. What? I asked. A switchblade would be better than a knife, Janko said. And where would I carry this switchblade? Strapped to your thigh. You could cut a hole in your pants pocket. Then, if you're attacked, you pull it out, hit the switch, and a 9-inch blade leaps to your disposal. Janko demonstrated the motion to me and mock-stabbed Harry, who clutched his stomach dramatically and fell over. Perfect, I thought. Thrilled by the idea of learning to defend myself, I asked, when do we start? Janko scratched his goatee. Since Valak isn't back, we could start with some basic self-defense moves. Nothing objectionable about that. Moves she could have learned by watching the soldiers train, Harry said, agreeing with his partner. They decided. Right now, they said in unison. So, I hope you enjoyed chapters 15 and 16. I love this book. I don't know how many times I have to say it. Excuse me, I do believe I'm getting a cold again. I'm going to play some music for you now. So I'm going to say goodbye now. Thank you to all you new subscribers. Thank you to all you returning subscribers. And don't forget, if you are new and you've never seen anything, this is the first one you've seen, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any more crazy random uploads. Don't forget, no matter where you are in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening or night time, I want you to do what you love doing. Love and hugs to all you fantastic people out there, and I'll definitely see you all again soon. Goodbye, my beautifuls. Enjoy the music. Sit and relax for the last 9 minutes.